Oh my god, we are so back.
We are totally back!
It's remote viewing number 5.
Number 5.
Cinco
de Remoto.
V.
Yes.
Yes.
Remember the 5th remote viewing.
Fortunately, this is V, the miniseries, and not V, the terrible continuing series. Not either one of them.
Yes.
But we are back here with myself, Cyrus.
And me, Brian.
And hey, I'm Luke.
And we are going to dissect the Blu-ray and DVD releases that came out, well, if we're not quite up to date, let's just say relatively recently.
In the recent past.
Yeah, within the month.
Yes.
And we got a whole slew of stuff as usual for you. We've also got some giveaways like we do every single time. Some great stuff to hand out to you, so you're going to want to pay attention. Real quick note about the giveaways once again. First off, there'll be a secret code given out on this show, a code word. When I post in the comments of another post somewhere out there on the site after this remote viewing podcast has gone up, I'll post in the comments the name, either the name of the DVD in particular or the name of the device, something where you can't miss what I'm talking about, basically. You email me back, specifically, send me a message back, not on my profile wall, but send me a message that says the name of the item that it is, where you saw it posted, and most importantly, what the code word is, because I will not honor or pay any attention to anyone who sends me things without the code word. Some of you out there, I know you know better, and you still did that. So, also, we only ship to America. That's not North America. That's America.
Yeah,
so
sorry, Canada.
So please, there was one member who was from Canada last time that I didn't catch in time until I was actually at the post office going with my printout, and I went, oh, god damn it.
Do you see how sneaky Canada is? I've been telling you this for years.
Their money's not, nothing in Canada is real. It's shenanigans.
So
They have mounted police and shit.
I know, right? And hockey. What is that?
Yeah, we were at a birthday
Dude, I
party.
love hockey, don't get me wrong.
We were at a birthday party the other night, and there was a piñata at the birthday party, and there was one guy who was like, so I don't get it, do you like hit it with a stick? And we just kind of looked at him, and he goes, I'm from Canada. So I said, yeah, just imagine it's full of Poutine and Rush albums, and go nuts.
Well, then he wouldn't hit it from a stick. He would get down on his knees and venerate it.
This
is
is
true.
true.
This
You
is
should have
very
told
true.
him that it was filled with coal miners' daughters.
We like to
I like that one.
yeah, we like to fly by night around here.
We do. And even though it's
But we
not-
also talk about movies every now and then.
we do.
We do?
When we're not beating Canadian women. But again, nothing's real in Canada, so they're not real people.
They're just so beatable.
Yeah, we've just
They're
lost
almost
all
like-
of our Canadian fan base.
They're almost like anime characters.
They are almost like anime characters, which is why they irritate me.
All right.
Whatever, Robin Schabotsky's beautiful.
This is true.
I don't even know who that is, but...
Oh, she's the Canadian character on How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, is she? Okay.
She's also going to be
So
in
beautiful.
the Avengers.
Is she really?
Yeah, as agent person I've never heard of from the Avengers.
Oh, right,
Well,
yes.
apparently there's
I've read good things about
Yeah.
that.
there's a comedy conspiracy that if you're not from Canada, you're not allowed to be a successful comedian, apparently. That's the law.
Huh.
It's a fact. You could look it
I
up.
was unaware, yeah.
Yeah, it's Canadians run the whole comedy gamut. It's behind the scenes. There's
You can look that up on stuffwemade-up.net.
There's a boardroom where Mike Myers sits smoking cigars, being really unfunny, but no one's allowed to say anything, and making decisions about the whole of comedy out there.
That explains
Jack
the
and
love,
Jill, his idea.
Yeah, explains the love guru.
Well, I don't think anything explains the love guru.
This is
but,
a good point.
Yeah, except maybe something meets Gian. But
Hey, we should dive into movies.
we should dive right into movies. You know what? What do you guys want to start with? We got a lot of stuff as usual.
You know what? I want to talk about one that I was actually excited to talk about last time until I realized it wasn't within our coverage bubble for the show,
Yeah.
which is Drive.
Right on. Yeah.
Nicholas Winding Refn.
One of those.
Winding Refn.
Winding
Winding
Refn.
Refn.
He's missing a few vowels.
Fring,
so.
ding, jing, fring.
Yes, Nicholas Winding gave us a movie. This is, of course, the guy that did the amazing Bronson a few years ago, starring Tom Hardy, which is still one of my favorite films of that year. I thought it was a fantastic piece of cinema. And this is the story of a driver who I don't think is ever named. I think he's just
He's
called
the driver. Yep.
who basically his whole thing is that he's a professional getaway driver, and he has very specific rules, kind of like Jason Statham in The Transporter, only better.
Or any given Jason Statham film.
Yes, exactly. So he gets involved in kind of a plot that makes him break a couple of his rules, of course, because that's whenever it's kind of like a gun in the first act. Whenever you have somebody who's telling you rules in the first act, they're going to be broken. I mean, that's why you're being told what they are.
Well, what kind of movie would it be if we just watched everybody follow the rules and everything's fine.
Well, especially in this movie, because his rule is like, I sit in the car and I only give you 5 minutes and I don't go in and I don't get involved. So if he had followed his rules through the whole movie, it would have just been him sitting in cars for 90 minutes.
It'd be like, there's the robbery and then back in the car. And that's it,
That's it.
Come on, that's not a very exciting movie. So
Not
naturally things have to go horribly, horribly wrong. And as usual, it's at least partially because he starts paying attention to a woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just say it. Like, Cyrus is all scared to say the word woman. It's like, I don't want to alienate our female viewers.
Well, we've already done a lot to intimidate them this episode, so
I think so.
I'm dancing around it.
Well, let me throw you in the briar patch. No, I mean, he does. He kind of takes a shine to Carey Mulligan, who lives down the hallway from him in their apartment building, and I don't know, like it's funny because the romance does kind of drive the story, but drive. But the reason we're watching this is because of the badassitude and the shit that goes down, and God, when the shit goes down, it is brutal.
Yeah,
just brutal. Because Ryan Gosling is like very quiet throughout the whole thing, very reserved. You're almost not sure he's paying attention. Like, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't he has these like small smirks, but he doesn't really react to most of the things that happen in the film until shit goes downhill, and then he gets unhinged, and you're like, where the fuck did that come from?
Well, Gosling is at his best when they ask him to be very stoic, and then eventually break. I mean, even what was that romantic comedy he was in earlier this year? Do you remember? Where he ended up falling for the daughter
with Steve Carell. And...
Yeah, he ended up getting involved, like tutoring Steve Carell. But anyway, it was the thing is like he was the best thing about it, I thought. And then there's that point where he eventually has to show that he's a real human being, and because he's so
That's a song from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
I thought it was Pee Wee's Playhouse.
And the real secret word is Gosling.
I remember that movie because it was exactly like the movie with Jason Bateman and Ryan Reynolds, and so they've just congealed into my head.
Well, neither one of them.
Crazy Stupid Love.
There we are. Yeah.
I was not a terribly big fan of either one, but I like the way Gosling's transformation is, and here, once again, he is very stoic. I think that. I don't know if Gosling has yet proven himself to me as one of the great actors, but he has a lot of charisma.
Sure.
And like I said, as tough guy stuff goes, or is very serious, like I have this thing, this is who I am, this is this character I play, and it's limited but specific, and then eventually surprising you by breaking out of it, that's almost his gimmick.
Yeah. I mean, the film really does get a lot of, and no pun intended, a lot of mileage out of his charisma. But
you're going to keep going with this, aren't you?
I am. No, but one of the things I really like about this movie, and it kind of goes
the way
off
it shifts gears at one point.
It does. It changes gears a lot.
I hate you both.
Oh man, we should have put on our seatbelts for this show. But no, the thing that I really like about it is that it feels like, from what you were saying about him not emoting too much, but having this charisma, reminded me a lot of like Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson, and I mean guys that would have been making badass movies like this in the 70s and even into the 80s a little bit. And I feel like the whole movie kind of has a grindhouse aesthetic to it, where the story is pretty simple, all things being equal. It's more about the severity of the violence and what the impact than it is about going to very intellectually deep places.
Yeah.
But the characters are all interesting in their own way, and Ryan Gosling really does remind me of Steve McQueen, just one of those guys that doesn't say much, has a clear objective in front of him, and just is going to go for it and be the upstanding defender of right and wrong, even if he has to kind of go into the gray area to do it.
One can't help but make those comparisons to those 70s classic films. I mean, I kept thinking of, and don't get confused with the Statham film, even though I didn't hate it like some people did, the Mechanic.
Yeah, the Charles
Bronson.
And
films like that where you go, okay, this is kind of a slower paced, but with moments of shocking violence and intensity. And this takes that period of action films with a very stoic lead character and gives it an art house vibe on top of it.
Right.
It's got a very experimental form of cinematography and audio mixing in it that is striking.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange film because I think describing it, you go into it expecting something like Bullet, something straightforward with a lot of cool action and driving stunts and all this kind of stuff. And while that stuff is there, it's not the most part of the movie. Like, the movie is balanced, I feel, with with these deep character moments. Bryan Cranston in particular is really a really well developed character that you get a really good sense from. And part of what I really like about what Refn does with Gosling's character is that he sets up from the very first scene that Gosling has nothing to lose. He has nothing. Like he goes through the first stunt and he drives and he does his thing and he goes back home and you realize that his home is nothing. Like he has like a bed and a workbench.
Yeah,
he has no worldly possessions other than the car he's currently driving.
His whole existence is Spartan because he's devised such specific and strict rules around every aspect of his life.
Yeah.
Right.
With that idea of just for survival.
Yeah, I was going to say samurai, but...
That he's not even really alive in a lot of
Exactly.
ways.
Yeah, and it is a lot like a samurai, and that's why like when shit does hit the fan, and I keep using that expression just to not actually explain what happens because I wouldn't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't seen it yet. But you know, when the second and third acts kick into play, you realize that he has no reason to stop. Like he has nothing. The only thing he cares about in the entire world is Carey Mulligan
And her kid.
and her kid. Yeah. Granted, but you know he has no personal connection to anything, so he's willing to go the distance. Whereas other people have, you know, businesses or family members or all these other things that are kind of conflicting their viewpoint. Like he has none of that. He's completely unencumbered.
I like that it's a quiet desperation that he has as well, because his connection to Carey Mulligan and her kid is one that, like, she's not even clear on what's going on herself. She doesn't know what he does for a living. Right. She has no idea that he's this career criminal, and his connection should be barely there at all. But for him, it's like the first real thing he's touched forever. However, you know, barely.
It's that last. I mean, it's a classic story element. It's that last tenuous grasp at anything good. Yeah. Like anything good that might still be within him is personified by these two.
And so he's willing to do absolutely anything to protect it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, this is a really terrific little film that I think maybe isn't quite as good as some people are putting it up to be. You know what I mean? Some people.
It is very, very good. I don't know if I would say it's a great film.
People have been,
but it's very, very good.
Pretty hyperbolic about calling it the best film of the year, and I don't think it is the best film of the year.
There is one thing that I want to mention, and that's Albert Brooks, because people have been going off about Drive in general, but specifically about Albert Brooks. I think all of the hype for Albert Brooks is deserved. 100%. Yeah. I think his performance... I mean, everybody is great in this. Even Ron Perlman is good in this. Ron Perlman, who will do anything for a paycheck.
I'm pretty sure that last year
really
he was
good
in 6
Drive.
movies.
Yeah. He keeps showing up in everything, but he's really good in Drive. But Albert Brooks is fantastic. Bryan Cranston is fantastic. There's just some really, really good, solid, old-school acting at work here.
I mean, the only thing I would even talk down about this movie at all is just that it's a very simple and familiar story, and that's intentional. But, you know, I mean, it's certainly based... You brought up samurai stuff, and Brian, absolutely. That's where it's pulling its base story from.
Yeah, I mean, Refn's a very intellectual director, and you know he's seen all of Melville's stuff. Like, this is kind of Le Samurai with a scorpion jacket instead of a suit.
Right, you're nicely put. So, I mean, if that sounds like it's something that appeals to you, you're going to fall in love with this, probably like all those other hyperbolic people.
Plus, it has a great soundtrack, which I know is like, for me, that's always a big draw, and I know a lot of people are the same way.
Well, you know what? Let's move on to a film that actually does have some samurai-esque elements.
I'm sorry. I actually have a kind of a weird connection to make with this and In Time, so if we can go to In Time next, and I will explain that in a moment.
Absolutely. I will change the direction of my...
You know, the best part about this being our show is that we can do whatever the fuck we want.
You know what? Screw it. We're just going to talk about Buckaroo Banzai for the next 2 hours. Awesome. Anyway, please continue.
Oh no! We'll talk about In Time for a bit. In Time, you know, obviously kind of a big sci-fi film, done by I've forgotten his name off the top of my head, but the director
Andrew Niccol
of Gattaca, which I thought was a fabulous film, one of the better sci-fi films of the last several years, certainly. So I was actually kind of excited for this, despite the trailers. And man, I could not have even fathomed how bad it would really be.
Yeah, it's funny. The trailers suggest a movie that's bad, and the actual movie is so much worse.
Well, okay, here's the main thing that kept me from... Okay, all right, so first off, I have so many things to say. The fact that Roger Deakins did the cinematography.
Oh my God,
there's so many
why?
About that. As we're watching the credits, like, I recognize people from all kinds of different, the costume designer is a well-known costume designer.
There's a lot of really big-name, awesome people attached to what is a mediocre Hollywood, couldn't be more Hollywood project. I mean, let me put it this way. The premise insists that every actor in it be like 23 because it's a science fiction premise where everyone in the world is 23 and
It's
hot.
a future where they've gotten rid of all ugly people.
Exactly.
So, yeah, of course
All right,
this
to
is a Hollywood movie.
To be completely fair, the script supposes that in the future we eliminate aging, and so genetically we put this into practice, and everyone ages to the age of 25 and then stops aging. And obviously, with the title of In Time, time is the currency. There is no money per se. There is only time. So every person lives to 25, and then their clock starts. And by their clock, I mean an actual green clock
on their arm,
on their forearm, all the way up their forearm too. Like it couldn't be like a small watch. It's like their fucking forearm.
I'm gonna throw out a quick problem I had with this movie, just based on that. Sometimes the clocks made noise, and sometimes they didn't. Like
that's just for you. That's just for
why?
you to enjoy.
No, like make up your mind whether your fucking arm clocks make noise or whether they don't.
Now,
sometimes they do.
To be fair, I have a mute button on my phone.
See, there you
but
go.
It's not a phone.
And maybe you can set sounds to your clock.
It's like an Etch-a-Sketch. You shake it for sound.
Or
you shake it and you die, apparently.
That's really problematic during masturbation.
Yeah,
but anyway.
You gotta learn to jerk off with the other hand.
The point
Otherwise, it's constantly like...
snooze button.
Oh, man. So time is the currency, and once you hit 25, your clock starts, and you have a year. And then, you can, just like the world, you can become rich or poor, and rich people can ostensibly live forever, and poor people are... It actually is kind of clever. See, the problem I have with this is that it's an interesting sci-fi concept that they fuck up the execution with terribly. But you have the rich people who can ostensibly live forever, and then you have poor people who are essentially living check to check, but now it's like 24-hour period to 24-hour period where, people are paying their loans and they have like an hour to get home so that they can meet up with their son who can recharge from his day job. And it actually is an interesting concept, and I mean, in better hands, maybe it would have.
It's obvious what they're going for, and I approve of that. That idea of like setting up people so they make just enough money to be able to get by, and spend that little bit extra they get every once in a while on something completely frivolous.
Yeah.
And here that character who's forced in that world is Justin Timberlake, who I think is personally terribly miscast.
Thank you.
He really is.
He really is. I don't think he's a terrible actor, but
not by any means.
But I think he's a limited actor.
He's not a leading man. I'm sorry, he's not. He's not a guy that should be getting his own movies. If you want to put him in a co-starring role, like in something like The Social Network or in a comedy where he can show up, that's great. He should not be getting his own vehicles.
I'll tell you this though, so he lives with his mom, who he's constantly coming back with.
His mom was Olivia Wilde, so they look like they're fucking.
It's the first time I've ever rooted for incest in a film. Now, so, come on, whatever.
Right.
I'm sure you got some sort of birth control thing and anyway.
And Cyrus is saying this is the first time he's rooted for incest.
Well, first I mean 70 seconds.
Well, I'm just saying, if it takes 9 months to grow a child in you, and you only have a couple of hours, well, that's your birth control right there.
Yeah.
Your death?
Yeah. You're gonna die in 2 hours anyway.
Wow, that's gonna be the new Santorum platform.
Which is funny because
Santorum will show up for sure.
And it's funny, speaking of politics, because this movie is clearly like a wafer thinly veiled condemnation of corporate America.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all its points, totally.
Yeah.
But there's a point that you're like, will you please stop hitting me in the head?
Yes. Stop mollywopping me with your concept.
It's just bad. It's bad all around. It's a poorly written script. Things happen for no apparent reason. Character motivations are non-existent. My God, the very last scene of the film, they just come up with some new objective that they haven't talked about at all or discussed in any way. And
they're like, we have to get to this place. And we're like, why?
Where is that place? We've never heard of that place. What? I don't
You haven't mentioned it yet. Why do
we can go ahead and say it's it's not a spoiler. They're like, we have to get to Livingston. And we're sitting there around going, what is Livingston?
Is that a place? Is that a person?
What?
Incredible amount of plot contrivances just to get us from point A to point B. And to make it makes it almost worse that there are moments that are cool here and there that you're like, oh, that's a neat idea.
Yeah.
That you go on to do absolutely nothing neat with.
No, and here's the thing.
Like,
it's terrible. Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit that it's terrible, but I kind of had fun with it. Like
it's a Z grade Hollywood film that is bad enough that you're laughing at how bad it is, and then by the end you're like, I never considered turning that off. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed it in that way that you enjoy that.
We hit on this time and time again when we're watching movies like this. I completely will buy into your world and your rules. You tell me what they are, and I am on board. But play by your own goddamn rules.
Yeah, stick within the mythology.
And this one doesn't, because even though they keep hitting us over the head with the fact that, oh, we've only got 45 seconds left to live, nobody's in a goddamn hurry. Yeah. There's so many scenes where it's like, oh my god, I've only got 14 seconds. What should I do? I don't know. Let's look around for 12 of them before we come up with something to do.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna die. Move!
Yeah, the death instinct doesn't seem to have really come across into the future.
It makes no goddamn sense. It really at all.
And you nail it when you said in the hands of someone better, this could have been a really good film. Like Tom Twyker, if he had done this, you would go, wow, this would be a film that guy who knows about velocity and film and urgency would have been the guy to do it. Or the Joe, what's his name, who did Hannah? They would have been a great choice for this.
Joe Wright?
Yeah, Joe Wright. Yeah, I mean, because it's a great idea that is executed just so terribly, it's kind of embarrassing.
And I mean, and it's sad because some of even most of the blame has to fall on Andrew Niccol's shoulders, and the implication there is that he's not a very good director, and that's just not the case, because Gattaca is a fabulous film.
It is a fabulous film.
And by all assumptions, you would have thought that...
Maybe not Simone, but...
Well, no, Simone isn't, but Gattaca is.
But I like Lord of War. I really like Lord of War.
Okay.
And I like The Truman Show a lot.
And he's directing The Host, so look forward to that.
God, I hope it's better than In Time.
Someone peeled off his skin and crawled into it.
Probably.
One last thing about In Time, I guess before Luke draws his connection to Drive, is that the point that I almost completely shut this movie off and walked away was when Timberlake takes a rich woman out of a car, looks at her and says, I'd say your money or your life, but that doesn't make any sense. He says that to her. Because ostensibly in a world that doesn't have money, where money doesn't exist. Where they don't even mention at what point in our history we did away with money. Money is never mentioned once, and then he's like, I'd say your money or your life, but that would be stupid, or something like that. And it's like, yes it would be, and it's stupid for you to say that it would be stupid.
Honestly, this is a film that I enjoy on the level in which that it doesn't stop moving, so there's that. Yeah. So you're like, okay, at least it's fast-paced. But I enjoyed it more with I can hardly wait to see our local comics Master Pancake attack this.
They will rip this movie and that would be a lot of fun.
Perfect for them. You know what? I would actually be able to recommend this film if there was a moment about 3/4 of the way through where everything stops and Justin Timberlake just turns slowly to the camera, looks at it, lets out a deep sigh, and then goes back to the
film. Or even just looks and goes, yep. Just some casual acknowledgement that everyone realizes that it's shit.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so it's not a tenuous connection, but for this week's technical breakdown, and Cyrus, you mentioned earlier, this film is shot by Roger Deakins, who, if you're not familiar with Deakins, look up his filmography. He's shot umpteen million beautiful films.
Yeah, he's one of the best.
I'm 99.7% sure that In Time is his first foray into digital. He's been a 35mm enthusiast for a long time. He's been a cinematographer at a time when 35mm was your only option for shooting, big budget Hollywood films. Often works with the Coen brothers. There's no denying. No one will sit here and tell you that Roger Deakins is a bad cinematographer. 9
Academy Award nominations.
And you're absolutely right, because as we were watching this, I remember thinking, man, the only thing I like about this is the way it looks.
Yeah, and it's framed well. Here's the thing. Deakins just doesn't understand digital yet, and that's fine, but just for a comparison's sake, In Time and Drive were both shot on the same camera. It's the new ARRI camera. It's the ARRI Alexa that is shooting, frankly, a lot of Hollywood features these days. But for comparison's sake, take your Drive Blu-ray and your In Time Blu-ray and just kind of go back and forth a little bit, because Drive is meant to look like film. Like, they're clearly trying to imitate a 70s film vibe, and it looks really, really good. In Time doesn't necessarily look bad, but it's very slick. I don't know. A lot of people think In Time looks bad. I didn't think it looked as bad as I was expecting it to look. But there are definite stylistic differences, and you'll be able to kind of go, oh, okay, some people understand digital more than others.
And
So.
yeah, Deakins is one of those guys. He'll get it.
He
Maybe
will.
the reason he took this is because he knew it was a smaller film that he could get a chance to. I mean, who cares if I fuck up, really?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
No one is paying attention. Maybe they said the Coen brothers went to him and goes, "We're going to switch to digital. You don't mind, do you?" He went, "Oh, fuck. I better take a Justin Timberlake film."
No, so he will get it, but that's a fun little experiment you can try at home just to bounce back and forth and see the differences using the exact same camera and the exact same process and everything.
Well, okay, so we're going to move on to another film, which is another film that has elements of the going back to where we started with the Yakuza or the samurai stuff, which is Outrage. Now,
fabulous
Now, there's a lot to be said how the Yakuza film has evolved over the years from being much more like the classic samurai films when Kurosawa was even delving into little aspects of it and representing them in a sort of like much more men of honor sort of way to becoming influenced later by the Chinese films, John Woo's like Triad movies, and then eventually to where it is now, where you've got Takeshi Kitano making a film that is one of the most brutal, like emotionless, violent, but just coldly beautiful movies that came out last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, if you're not familiar with Takeshi Kitano, who is also known as Beat Takashi, he's
released by a bunch of Canadian women.
Yes, by those dastardly Canadians and also me. He's a guy that is actually pretty ingrained, not only within the Yakuza genre, but in the Japanese genre films in general. He was in a Zatoichi movie.
Yeah.
He was in Battle Royale.
Which
he actually
is coming out on Blu-ray soon.
Yes, it is. Oh my god. And he actually directed his Zatoichi movie, The Blind Swordsman, and his take on that character was revolutionary. And I won't spoil anything, but that movie's great. And he's just one of these guys that every time he's in a movie now, I'm desperate to see it. And Outrage is him returning to. He's done a few Yakuza movies, Sonatine, and I'm blanking on the other one off the top of my
Fireworks
head.
was one, wasn't it?
Yes. So this is him kind of returning to that genre and returning with a bang, almost as if he's like, "Oh, you forgot about me? Okay, well, I'm gonna shoot you in the face."
Well, I've always looked at him as kind of the Clint Eastwood of Japan in a lot of ways. He's
that's pretty apt.
Very grizzled sort of look to him.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like he's always looked older than he even was.
Yeah.
When he was
definitely.
younger, he looked old and wise and dangerous.
Oh, you know what? The other one I was trying to think of, and this is not a great example of Yakuza movies, but his brother,
right?
The one he was in with Omar Epps.
Yeah, not one of his better films.
Not one of his better ones, but that
And we've been kind of dancing around this, but clearly B. Takashi is both a writer, director, and an actor, and often stars in his own films that he is directing. Outrage is a film that he directs and stars
Which
uh,
in.
is why the Clint Eastwood thing is
Yes.
put that on top because that's the other thing about him.
Definitely.
There. And here in Outrage, you've got him as there's a huge organized crime syndicate that has two smaller syndicates underneath it that seem to be the two brothers of the main crime boss, and one of them is Beat Takeshi. Or I'm sorry, that's not true. One of the underbosses to one of them is Beat Takeshi.
because he's not technically a boss. He's kind of
he's
the
an
button
underboss.
man.
He's definitely the enforcer type of guy.
Yeah, he's a boss.
The underboss. Underboss is good.
Yeah.
And these two groups, these two brothers are starting to fight more and more. They're trying to get around Dad's rules, and Dad himself seems to be like, just fuck both these guys. I want to own everything myself. I don't even. They're just, he doesn't even approve of the whole structure he created himself. Everybody wants out for themselves except for possibly Beat Takeshi, who seems to be the one guy who's actually loyal to his own people who work underneath him.
Yeah.
And it is in that sense an honor story as things just start disintegrating as everybody is trying to fuck everybody out of everything, and Takeshi, who's just trying to be loyal to his boss, finds himself in a position where he can't be as the film goes along. And it's hard to really go into so much the plot because it has a plot. It's just very convoluted the way it constantly things are happening and the whole game is changing.
Takashi himself has said that he didn't want this to be celebrated as like, oh, this is my big return. He said that this is one of the first movies that he made with the sole intention of being entertaining, and that most of the writing process was him trying to come up with creative ways to kill the other gangsters.
Right.
So he basically wrote this like a fucking horror movie, writing the deaths first.
And it is, I mean, it's so bloody and violent and unexpected and shocking, and there's great performances all the way through here. I mean, if you've seen a Yakuza movie, you've seen the structure of this. You've just probably never seen one with this level of intensity and violence that wasn't doing it for laughs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because there are those that play it for like, okay, we're doing goofy.
Like Dead or Alive.
Or
for
Yakuza
example.
Weapon, which we'll talk about
Yeah,
later.
there you go.
But this is like, it's trying to be real world. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's violent to the point that you're, even as a person who's used to violent films, you cringe at points.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Because sometimes it just comes out of nowhere. Like, you'll be having a discussion, and then all of a sudden there are body parts flying, and
The
you're just like,
apologies are violent.
shit.
There's like 4 or 5 apology scenes in this movie that are violent, for fuck's sake.
I have
People
seen-
just apologizing for shit.
I've seen so many people in Japanese films cut off their own finger as a sign of tribute. I mean, it's one of the, it's a
trope.
It's a trope.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a Yakuza thing, and this is the first time I ever had to look away when it was.
Whenever anyone said, I'm sorry, I was like, fuck no, I'm leaving the room. I can't take this.
What I really like about this is that it's very basic, and by that I mean like it seems like a lot of Japanese films in general, but even Yakuza films, like it's like, okay, we'll do some Yakuza stuff, and then we'll go over here and talk about one of their girlfriends, and you know, there are all kinds of tangents. There are no tangents in this movie. This movie is all about the Yakuza families and what's going on within the Yakuza families, drugs, women, gambling, all of those things and how they play into the larger story, and it never stops moving. That's probably the best part about Outrage, is that I can't imagine anybody sitting down and being bored with it.
It's the Taken of
constantly
Japan.
moving. It absolutely is, and it's fabulous. It really is. You know, there's double and triple crosses, and you know, anybody that likes organized crime films would like Outrage, whether
Yeah.
you have an appreciation or understanding for Yakuza films or Japanese films at all. You know, it holds up as a film here in America for anybody that can appreciate, you know, a hard-boiled crime film.
And it's nice that it is. In some ways, it does the minimum with all the things that it doesn't need to, because it recognizes that its audience is familiar with its tropes. I mean, it doesn't spend too much time going, oh, let's find out about these characters and who they are, and sit down and have more personal moments. They know its audience isn't here for that, and Beat Takeshi is able to create a thing where, in very small scenes, you get exactly what you need to understand what the dynamic is between all these people.
This is pretty much, in terms of Yakuza cinema, the opposite of Kinji Fukasaku's The Yakuza Papers, which has so many characters introduced and their backstories explained at length that it almost feels like the Iliad. Like you have all these characters like, oh, and then he was the boss to this guy who went to that, and it was just like, oh my god. I mean, they're good movies.
It's like, go back and make another Battle Royale.
Kinji Fukasaku.
I don't know. Did you see Battle Royale 2?
I'm hoping that 3 could be better.
Isn't he dead?
Did Kinji Fukusaki die?
Kenji Fukasaku, my friends, did die in 2003.
Okay.
I was completely unaware of that. Holy shit.
Yeah, because I thought he didn't even get to finish Battle Royale 2. I thought that was the one.
Yeah, that's why it sucked ass.
Maybe so.
Could be.
Yeah.
But yes, Outrage, highly recommend.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
Really high on our recommend list. Now, here's a film that you guys sadly did not get to see this time around, but it seems appropriate to follow up here because I just finished watching this. It's Yakuza Weapon.
Yakuza Weapon!
Now, there's a lot of these sort of like insane, super gory, lots of crazy sexual and shit type of Japanese action films out there now. Like Machine Girl, I felt was like the shot across the bow for these films to just start coming out en masse. And most of them are not very good.
Yeah, they're mostly made by a company called Sushi Typhoon.
Right. And
credit where credit's due, though. Sushi Typhoon is part of Nikatsu, which is one of the great Japanese studios of all time.
True.
And they have put out some entertaining. It's one of those things where it's either your thing or it's not. But beyond that, there are at least one or two that most people can get behind.
They're the type of things that you wouldn't want to go to a film festival for, because if you've seen one,
ironically
you've
enough,
kind of seen them all. So it's like, hey, once a year, I'll watch one of them and have a good time.
Right? Yeah.
But this is actually kind of a departure for it, because it's not quite the level of intensity and craziness of those films. Which still, make no mistake, no one should mistake this for reality on any level. It's actually based on a really popular manga by Ken Ishikawa, who I believe is also now dead, so it's done as a tribute to
really
his
nice
works.
pronunciation there, by the way.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
It sounded good to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Until our Japanese fans correct us, we're going to go with that.
Yeah, exactly. And they will, too.
They will.
And the story here follows Shozo Iwaki, played by Tak Sakaguchi, who you might know from Versus. He was one of the main guys.
Oh, right on,
that.
right on.
And he actually also directed this film, or co-directed it anyway, and co-wrote it. Where he is like a super ridiculously crazy effective fighter. Like there are these guys in the beginning in South America who are shooting machine guns at him, and he's just standing there lighting up a cigarette. And he's like, how are they doing? How's he doing that? The bullets aren't hitting him. He's like, that's because I've decided they're not going to.
Japan.
I'm not afraid of them, so they can't hurt me. It's like,
awesome.
Really? Would that work? I have a couple people I need to convince that's true of.
Who the fuck is after you, Cyrus?
Well, there's a couple trolls, but
the Canadians,
the
Rush mob.
He finds out that his dad, who is a Yakuza boss, has been assassinated. So he comes back home to Japan with his two sidekicks to find out that there's a new boss, Kurawaki, played by Shingo. No, that I don't know how to say. Tsurumi, who was an old underboss and has double crossed them and wants to rule everything. And it turns into like a series of him fighting smaller guys and working his way up to them.
Kind of like Game of Death.
Sort of. Yeah. Maybe not to that degree. But as it goes along, it gets goofier and goofier and goofier. Because at first you're like, okay, this is like, I don't know if you ever saw Moon Over Tao, which is one of the earlier Japanese like superheroes mixed with like a period piece action film, where they're not flat out calling them superheroes, but they might as well be. Or the Storm Riders or something like that. I was like, oh, this is going to be something like that, but modern day with Yakuza. It's not. It's a goofball comedy in a lot of ways. And there's a point where you're like, okay, so they're just fighting these guys, whatever. But there's a point where they decide that, okay, so his arm gets blown off and his legs got blown off. So out of nowhere, the secret agency shows up. And mind you, this is more than halfway through the film. Who'd say, yes, we are now going to give you bionic limbs. And so his hand turns into a rail gun, and his knee opens up and shoots rockets.
That sounds exactly like Sushi Typhoon.
Yeah, it really does.
Exactly. And which is like, you're like, all right, so it's one of those films. But while it's doing it, it keeps trying interesting things. You're like, wow, there is a single shot fight scene that goes on for like 8 minutes here, where they're following him around this, as he's going up the stairs and going from room to room, fighting off all these guys, and it's all just one shot. The cameraman's just following him around and circling around. It's not static at all, and it's convincing fighting, and I'm like, that was pretty ballsy.
I liked it. I liked it when they did that in The Protector. Like, that's really cool. Like, I will watch something like that no matter what film it's in.
Actually, speaking of that, I believe this film was released by Welgo USA.
It was, yeah.
Who have picked up a lot of Asian films for release here in the States. In fact, they picked up one of our favorites from Fantastic Fest a couple of years ago called Man from Nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fabulous film that you can get on Blu-ray in the States thanks to Welgo. And that also has one of those shots where you realize that, this guy is running down a hallway and jumps out a window. It's like the third floor window and lands on the pavement below. And it takes you a second to realize, but you're like, holy shit, the camera followed him the whole way. Like, the cameraman jumped out the window too. Like, what the hell just happened?
It's badass.
What's weird about this is, like, as opposed to some of those others, like Machine Girl, which are very standard with what they're doing at this point. They're almost rote. You're like, okay, we've seen so many of these now. There's no real surprises anymore, unless you've never seen one, in which case... Yeah. But this keeps trying, as haphazard as it is, and it is, it's totally haphazard. Some shit is just terrible in it. You're like, what in the fuck was that? There are people punching at each other, not even making contact,
Yeah.
It's like, that looks horrible. And then the next scene will be jaw-dropping. Like, wow. There's a sequence where, like, all of a sudden, for no reason, he's fighting all these people behind a series of different colored, like, primary colored blinds, and, like, going through, and it's just changing how he kills each guy in the shadow play as we see him going through it. I was like, that's really fucking neat.
Yeah.
And then the next scene is something really stupid again. But, I mean, there's a whole thing, like, the one character, his sister gets murdered in front of him, and he's like, that makes him go unhinged, and so he gets an offer to fight his old best friend, and they turn his sister, who's totally naked in this, as a super bionic robot herself, but only as a tool. She's not, like, alive anymore. She's just totally naked. So, like, her her vagina is a rocket launcher. So he's flipping her around like she's nunchucks or something, and then we'll put her up on his shoulder and spread her legs, and missiles come flying out of her vagina, and then he'll like put her and strap her around his waist, and her mouth opens up, and a machine gun comes out of her mouth.
I just want to say that I love the Japanese. I think they're doing brilliant work over there. Really, really thought-provoking film coming out of Japan.
I mean, if this sounds like it's your thing, it is.
I think we're giving you all of the evidence that you need to make that decision.
But if it sounds like it isn't, it's not. You'll be so mad that I even am sitting here telling you that I enjoyed this. I don't know. I did enjoy it. I recommend it for that strained crowd that are weird like me. What do we got? What do we got next, sir?
You know what? I think I'm gonna go to a film that I saw that I really liked. I don't know if Luke was able to, but Anonymous.
Right.
Which was Roland Emmerich, of all people, the guy who's known for hating all of the landmarks around the world with his disaster movies. He directed a movie about the true identity of the writers of Shakespeare's play.
Yeah.
Shakespeare's plays.
To assume that Shakespeare never was, if he didn't, okay, so a lot of people in history say he didn't even exist, but here it's like he did, but he was definitely not
the supposition here is that, this isn't a spoiler because this is what they lay out from frame one, is that it's actually the Earl of Oxford that was writing all of these plays, and he was a nobleman who was, because of some things that had happened in his past, plus his station in life, was not permitted to contribute artistically to the world.
And that's Rhys Ifans.
Yes, who's great in this movie. And he therefore gives his plays to a struggling playwright whose name is Ben Jonson, I believe.
Yes, I believe
Ben Jonson. And he basically is to take the plays written by Anonymous, as it says, and produce them. Well, the first one he does is so goddamn popular that people demand to know who the author is. And now he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because this guy's his patron. He doesn't want to betray him, but he also doesn't want to take credit for it. So here comes this drunk asshole actor that he has named William Shakespeare and goes, well, if it'll protect your name and the nobleman's name, I'll just put my name on it. And of course, Shakespeare becomes the toast of the town, and there's like... So that's going on like storyline A, and then storyline B is basically the Tudors. It's just all of the like behind the scenes wheeling and dealing, sex and murder and betrayal that... went along with trying to put King James on the throne after Elizabeth, and it's just, some of it kind of feels like a history lesson. I'm not gonna lie, but
for the record, a highly inaccurate history lesson. But
sure,
we'll let that go for now.
Sure. No, but see, that's the thing that's interesting about this movie is that all of this could be bullshit. This is what we're doing is we're calling out that what we've learned in school since we were really little for centuries is wrong, but this could be complete bullshit too. This basically, since they're saying that what we know isn't true about Shakespeare, that rule can kind of apply to the other shit as well. Like the other shit we've learned in history class could fall under that same blanket.
Which would mean something if he wasn't just blatantly wrong about like 50 or 60 things that are for sure in history for the purposes of making the plot work. Well, if you look online, there's people who've made lists of all the details that are fact, that are known. Like there's no question that he just changed because it wouldn't have worked. The story wouldn't have worked without that being there.
But I feel like if you're the kind of person that needs
fantasy.
Exactly. Like I feel like if you're the kind of person that can't look past that, then in the first place you're going to have a problem with the fact that they're saying William Shakespeare isn't real.
Well, I'm just trying to diffuse any possible serious discussions on the topic.
Yeah, no, obviously not everything that happens in this movie happens the way, we've read it in history books, and some of it's, just blatantly wrong. However, I feel like he's tinkering around with one story we know. Why not tinker with all of them?
Well, he's not the first person to suggest there's a conspiracy. Many people have. There's not generally English scholars, but fair enough, there are a lot of people who do continue to suggest that it could have been any number of people. Christopher Marlowe, Francis Bacon. There's a lot of suspects that have been played. As many as there are for Jack the Ripper. Right. I'm surprised no one's saying Jack the Ripper was Shakespeare at this point.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
You've seen Macbeth. It seems not entirely out of the question, right?
Well, and the thing is about this movie is because we know Roland Emmerich for a very specific type of movie.
Yeah,
Landmark destruction.
Landmark destruction, and very special effect heavy, and not a lot of substance.
This is special effect heavy, though. You just don't realize it.
Yeah, because it's all to create the world of Elizabethan England.
Yeah.
And I actually think the production design on this movie is really damn good.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think probably the thing I liked best about this film was the way it completely puts you inside that world. I mean, creating the was it the Circle Theater?
The Globe.
The Globe. It's convincing, and
Yeah.
it's not real. That's
No.
CG. It looks totally real, though.
It's probably the best CG we've seen in a Roland Emmerich movie, and
Yeah.
it's weird to say that because it's not a disaster movie.
Although, to be fair, there came a point in the film that I would have appreciated if it had started chasing John Cusack in a limousine.
Sure, no, fair enough. But it's something that I didn't expect to like because it was Roland Emmerich. I thought, well, that's an interesting story, but surely he'll fuck it up. And frankly, I was engaged the entire time. I thought the fact that it's introduced as a play supposing these ideas is, I mean, it sounds hokey, but it's actually very, it ties into Shakespeare a lot in that Shakespeare would often have characters that would come out before the play. And the opening of Romeo and Juliet, for example, like he has a character come out and tell you what's about to happen.
Sure.
So they work that into this like meta angle on it, where it's like we're going to be introduced by the narrator of the play about the anonymous story, and then as that play unfolds, that's what we're watching. Now
we see elements of what's going on in his own life and the various intrigues as things that if you've read Shakespeare plays, you recognize as being elements from.
Yes, like the murder of Polonius. Polonius, that was his name. I couldn't think of it earlier. In Hamlet, behind the curtain, actually shows up as a part of the Earl of Oxford's actual life. So you see where the inspiration for that came from. But the other thing that I really like about it is that it does have this way of kind of telling multiple stories. However, that can also be considered its biggest problem, I think, at points, is that there are flashbacks within flashbacks within flashbacks.
Yeah.
It just keeps on going backwards, and at some point you're like, all right, am I in Inception yet? I'm not sure.
It's convoluted past any need to be that convoluted, and it's already confusing enough to people who maybe haven't memorized all their Shakespeare and their history of the tutors.
Right.
I needed a tutor for my tutors.
Hey,
Whoa.
fantastic.
I
hate you both.
there came a point that it wasn't I stopped being entertained by it, but I stopped being invested in it.
Okay.
I was still entertained, but it was more just kind of going past me. It was just washing over me. I wasn't really clear on everything that was going on anymore, or why certain things were important and others weren't. There are points that I went, wait, but that doesn't make sense because you did that. See, I still think it's a Roland Emmerich film, ultimately. He makes errors in judgment. He makes things plot elements that just conveniently go away. But they're not as notable or as irritating as they are in a film where it's just modern day. There's less stuff there's less things to keep track of. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I felt like the complexity of it was more than anything a mask for his usual story element problems that he has with things. But that being said, it's still just as a technician, one of his best works.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I think I know which elements you're referring to as far as things that are introduced that aren't effectively, fleshed out, but they didn't bother me because they were so, to me, insignificant to the grander scheme of things that I feel like I got why it was there and what they wanted me to understand, mm-hmm. and I didn't have the need to, be explained anymore, which is funny because I thought there were things that they should have, like we were talking about it being convoluted. One of the things is that in this time period, people had actual names, and then they also had titles that were completely different, and then some of them had like 4 or 5 titles, and at various points in the movie, they refer to these people by their names, by their first title, by their second. I'm like, pick one. Just because you're talking about the same person, why do you need to confuse the audience by saying, his name's John, well, he's the Earl of Oxford, and he's also the Dane of this, and blah, 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 and I'm just like, pick one and call him that.
I still think because it was a magic trick. It was distraction from all those story elements that didn't work at all.
Well, maybe it worked on me.
You're like, just don't worry. You just don't understand. If you saw it again, you'd get it.
See, and Brian is bitching about this as if he doesn't ask all of us to call him Lord Salisbury of Canterbury.
This is true.
Which no one does, to be fair.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's actually Lord Salisbury of Canterbury because I eat a lot of those fucking eggs.
We just call him Steak Pliskin, as usual.
Yes. See, but I have 8 titles too. This is the problem.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of people went into this going, yeah, but that what we talked about earlier, it's so clever, and it is clever and fun. The element of watching all these elements that we recognize in Shakespeare plays popping up here and there in his life, and I would have had a lot more respect for that if there isn't a much better movie that did the exact same thing years earlier. That would be Shakespeare in Love, which also came out on Blu-ray.
Hey, maybe we should talk about that one now.
Yeah. You like my segue?
So that was anonymous.
That was anonymous. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
We'll go back to that, repeating the titles. And before that was Yakuza Weapon. Shakespeare in Love is a 1998 British-American film directed by John Madden, not the football player, so you don't have to worry. It's not a bunch of like little X's and zeros.
No one wants to do here is put penis in her vagina.
Got to put Polonius on the stage.
Co-written by Tom Stoppard, who did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is one of the other classic meta Shakespeare adaptations.
Yeah.
Here it is it's another reinvention of what was going on during Shakespeare life, except here Shakespeare, played by Joseph Fiennes, is writing Romeo and Juliet at a very early stage where he thinks it's a pirate adventure story at this point. And he ends up becoming involved with a theater run by Geoffrey Rush, who is running out of money. He's being threatened by Tom Wilkinson, who's a local thug who he owes money to.
Tom Wilkinson, by the way, is great in everything, and I will hear no one tell me differently.
Oh no, he is. You're absolutely right. But he ends up falling for a woman who dresses up as a man to come in and try out for a part, played by Gwyneth Paltrow.
Played by Barbara Streisand and Yentl.
No. Which is, right there, you're like, oh, that's a Shakespearean trope anyway. The whole change genders, dress up as a different gender thing, mistaken identity. And she can't be involved in the theater because back then it was disgraceful to be, A, it was disgraceful to be involved with the theater on any level, and B, women were not allowed by royal decree to act on stage.
It was kind of disgraceful to be a woman at that time. Well, all things being equal.
No, that's very true.
Which they weren't.
And she indeed is a daughter of a wealthy merchant who is trying to set up a marriage between her and before he was a romantic lead, Colin Firth. Mm-hmm. When he was still playing bad guys almost exclusively.
When no one had discovered how good he looked in a sweater.
So what ends up happening here is Shakespeare finds his muse in Gwyneth Paltrow, and they get heavily involved. They fall desperately in love with each other while always realizing the tragicness of their situation. Like, there is no way this will ever turn out good.
God, that sounds like a play that he wrote with two lovers who know that their relationship is doomed.
Well, that's the joy of this play.
Star-crossed.
I would call this one of the greatest movies about the nature of what love is, really. I really strongly feel that way. I love it because it examines it through the eye of Shakespeare and the greatest love story ever, which is still, to me, Romeo and Juliet. It takes that and it expands on that, and it shows it's basically analyzing that play and why it's so beautiful through the Shakespeare or Joseph Fiennes and Gwyneth Paltrow's own self-aware doomed romance. And you watch the elements of the play, probably Shakespeare's most recognizable play, all the bits of it, every single bit of it come to life through the various tidbits of things that are happening to them in their life, as well as elements of Twelfth Night, which is the play Shakespeare at least maybe wrote next.
Yeah. If he existed.
But look, we all know that the best part of Shakespeare in Love is Ben Affleck. So... And I kind of am only half kidding, because I think Ben Affleck is hilarious in Shakespeare in Love, and I really, really like his character.
He plays the most popular actor of the time, and I don't see his name here. Oh, yeah, Ned Allen, who was a real guy as well. He was like the most celebrated actor of the
Ironically,
time.
Ben Affleck plays an actor named Matt Damon.
He really got inside him. That's true.
Hi-oh!
Scoop!
Yeah. No, Ben Affleck is really good. The only reason he's in this is because he was dating Gwyneth Paltrow at the time. He wanted to be close to her and not like she was going off to England to film this. He was like, oh,
plus he smelled that it would be an Oscar-winning movie and wanted to be attached to another Oscar-winning movie.
Who's the guy you're going to be making out with? Oh shit, I am totally going to be in this film as well. Keep my eye on you. Cut, Ben. You don't say cut.
You're not the director, goddammit. You will never direct.
I will become a director. It was all history.
There's so many great people in this film. Like I said, Geoffrey Rush is hysterical in here. Judi Dench plays Queen Elizabeth, and she's totally great. Rupert Everett is Christopher Marlowe. He has a very small role, but a nice one. Imelda Staunton plays Gwyneth Paltrow's nurse, who's also very funny in the film. I mean, all throughout it, you're like, I know that guy. There's a lot of that. And this is, I'm going to say it, this is one of my favorite, like I said before, one of my favorite love stories. I think it's simultaneously funny and super smart Anyway, that's my take on it.
It's a great film.
I
fantastic
like all the meta aspects of. I mean, like, God, I shouldn't tell people this, but I mean, I was a theater nerd for a long time. Like,
everyone point and laugh.
says the guy who talks about eye mounts on the new Red camera for 2 hours. Shut the fuck up.
Everyone point and laugh, like I said.
It was something that for a while that I thought I wanted to do. So
Whatever, theater nerd.
Right, exactly. So I went to college, and we studied Shakespeare, and like
when you weren't sucking cocks.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
And the thing is, like, that actually makes me appreciate movies like Anonymous and Shakespeare in Love, because you do see not only the elements from the plays within the plays, so to speak, but you also see like almost like a development of the things that came to canonize Shakespeare, like the mistaken identity and the doomed romance and all the kind of stuff that would show up and define Shakespeare, but told in a way that's fresh and meta and really interesting. And I dig both Shakespeare in Love and Anonymous for those reasons.
A lot of people got mad at this film in retrospect because it took away Best Picture, so to speak, from Saving Private Ryan. And I remember there being a lot of dudes like, what? Was he no dumb romance movie beating Saving Private Ryan? People shooting each other? Yeah, whatever. Saving Private Ryan is a kinda.
I like that you're quoting the earliest trolls on the internet.
Who the hell does Cyrus talk to about movies?
You don't remember? Well, you guys are young, so.
I was like 4 when
I was watching, excited about Gem and the Holograms.
They were truly outrageous.
Joe.
No, that's Cat. Sorry.
And I would also recommend, I think we've talked about it before already, but John Madden also directed The Debt last year, which I thought...
I didn't get to see that.
Oh, yeah. I
oh, no, wait, I did. I'm sorry. No, I did.
The Debt, I think, is a really great spy thriller, and I kind of wish John Madden would make more movies, because Not that John Madden, goddammit.
I know. I want to play the PS3 John Madden's movies game.
I can't wait to see his next movie in 2013. Yeah, Madden 2013 is going to be great.
He also did Captain Corelli's Mandolin, so don't get too excited.
Okay, fine.
Oh man, you know what? I like Proof. I'll be that guy.
Proof is a great play.
Based on a great play, and I thought the movie version was
also starring
good.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
It was good.
I don't think I saw that one. So,
I dig it, man. It's about
a mathematician who's
going nuts, right?
He's got Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So he's kind of losing his
mind.
mind.
Plays his daughter,
and it's just tough because he's a genius and he's losing his grip on reality. It's a really sad story and
really interesting. Though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Highly recommend that one.
Well, so I think this is as good a time as any to take a break. What do you guys think?
I think that sounds
That was
great.
Shakespeare in Love.
Shakespeare in Love. And that's actually one of my highest picks of the week. If you guys haven't seen it.
And Amazon has had it really, really cheap lately. You can pick it up for like $6 or $7.
Yeah.
And you have no excuses not to.
Yeah, it's terrific. And you want a good date movie. Well,
Shakespeare
there
in
you
Love.
go. She will put out.
It's like diamonds. She'll pretty much have to.
Cyrus guarantees it.
Yeah, you make all these jokes, but in the theater department, I was gay all the way to the bank. So
You're gay like in Harold and Kumar Christmas?
Yes. Chicks dig gay guys.
How long have you been with your wife again? Like 37
Shush.
years? Okay.
That's inconsequential.
All right.
Wow. Wait, who's the beard at your house? Is it you, Luke, or is it her?
No, who's to say?
I will say this, though, Brian, in your defense. I did musical comedy for 10 years on stage.
Boom! Suck it!
Yeah, I did.
I'm sorry. I heard I did Men. I don't know. I don't know what else was there.
I hate you.
No, you don't.
I'll just edit this part out so it's just Brian saying, I am gay over and over again.
Good. I feel like now is the time where I should admit that I did theater. I did dramatic interpretation as a young child.
You couldn't read. Shut up.
I did. It's true. I did.
I can't read!
From the ages of 5 to 9.